Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Psychology Unit 6, which is all about learning. The types of learning I'm going to be talking about are associative learning, classical conditioning, and operant conditioning. Associative learning is learning that certain events go together. An example would be not touching the hot stove because you got burned last time. Classical conditioning is learning where someone learns to link stimuli and anticipate events. An example would be the experiment with little Albert, where he began to fear white rats because they were paired with a loud noise. And operant conditioning is learning where behavior is strengthened by a reinforcer or diminished by a punishment. An example would be earning a bonus at your job for doing a good job. Ivan Pavlov, he said we can train anything to associate any two things. So he had an experiment where he paired the sound of a bell with the presentation of food with dogs. He trained two dogs to repeatedly salivate when a bell was rang, even when no food was present. In this experiment, the unconditioned stimulus is the food, the unconditioned response is the salivation, the conditioned stimulus is that the bell would lead to food, and the conditioned response was to drool when the bell was rang. The processes of learning. Acquisition is the first phase of learning when a new behavior is established. So in Ivan Pavlov's experiment, the bell being paired with food would be the acquisition. Extinction is when the response weakens and disappears because the stimulus isn't paired with it. So in the experiment, it would be if the response would go away if the food isn't offered after the bell. Spontaneous recovery is the reappearance of the response after a period of time. In that experiment, it would be ringing the bell after they woke up because they went so long without the stimulus. Generalization is when the response is still triggered by a similar stimulus, even if it's not identical. So in that experiment, it would be if you rang the bell in a similar key but not the identical one, it would still work on the dogs because it's similar. Biological predisposition is inherited factors that increase the chance of developing certain behaviors or traits. So, not in that experiment, it would be having a predisposition to bipolar disorder if someone else in your family has it. And the definition of learning is relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience. Operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner first came up with the term. He created the Skinner box to study animal behavior. Operant conditioning is voluntary behavior that is strengthened or weakened by reinforcement or punishment. A reinforcement increases the likelihood of the behavior being repeated, and a punishment decreases the likelihood of the behavior being repeated. Continuous reinforcement is rewarding the behavior every time it occurs. Partial reinforcement is rewarding the behavior only some of the time. Positive reinforcement would be giving something that you like. An example would be a child getting a cookie for good grades. Negative reinforcement would be taking away something you don't like. An example would be a teacher taking away homework for the whole class because they had good behavior. A positive punishment is giving something that you don't like. So an example would be adding chores for bad behavior. And negative punishment is taking away something that you do like. An example would be taking away someone's phone if they broke curfew. So anything positive is giving something, and anything negative is taking away. There are two types of motivation. The first type is intrinsic motivation, which is the desire to perform a behavior for interest and satisfaction. So an example would be any sort of hobby, like playing an instrument, which is only for personal interest. And extrinsic motivation, which is the desire to perform a behavior for external rewards or to avoid punishment. So an example would be wanting to get good grades to avoid failing the class. Other key terms are learned helplessness, which is the acceptance learned when unable to avoid certain events, An example would be if a kid fails all of their tests in school, they'll begin to give up on education and think that they won't succeed. Observational learning is learning by observing others. So it would be like learning how to fold laundry by watching your parents do it. Mirror neurons are neurons that fire when observing others perform tasks or when imagining performing the task. And shaping is when reinforcers guide behavior closer and closer to the desired behavior. An example would be when teaching a dog how to do tricks, you start by using smaller and smaller steps until you work your way up to the big trick. That's it for Unit 6. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll have the Unit 7 video coming soon. Thank you.